The third technique I'm going to show you is to do a simulated mezzotint. Now, mezzotint is a photographic process, but we can mimic it with some of the Photoshop filters, and it will give you the effect that I showed you in several of the examples of packaging where you had black and white photos over kind of a craft paper or a newsprint type paper. And it's a really great technique, and again, it's pretty simple. The one thing, and you'll hear me say this over and over again, you never want to do anything to your photography that you can't undo. And in Photoshop, oftentimes you can do effects as separate layers so it doesn't affect the photo underneath. In this case, we're going to use a filter in Photoshop called noise, and unfortunately, noise is not something you can do in a separate layer. It's also not an effect that you can undo. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave the original photo here completely unadulterated. And what I'm going to do is come over here in the layers panel. I'm going to drag this background layer down here to duplicate it. So now I have the exact same photo over the original. Now whatever I do with this, if a client comes back and wants stuff to be altered, at least I still have my original photo underneath here. And I could just delete this layer and do it again a different way if I want to. This is a really simple technique. What we're going to do is come up here under the filter drop-down menu. And we want to come down here to noise. What noise is simulated film grain. It's some of the imperfections that you would get if you were using a film. So again, noise is kind of simulated film grain. You can also add simulated dust and scratches to it. If you have a photo that already has noise in it, you can try and reduce it through reduce noise or a technique we call despeckling. But we're going to add noise to this, and I'll show you what that looks like. So when this pulls up, let me get a part of the photo here. Now you'll notice in the instructions it says to mask out the coffee. Let me find out where I am here on the photo. There we go. It's in the wrong place. So I'll zoom in on this, and I know in the video it's going to be kind of hard to see, but you can see there's a little bit of simulated film grain in there. And what you want to do is, first of all, you can play with the amount here, and you can see a preview image behind there, how much noise you get in there. You want enough so that the effect is noticeable, but you don't want to do it so much that you start losing track of everything, of what the image is here. So I'll probably do maybe a little bit more, somewhere in 40–50% in here. Let's make it even and just do 40%. Now you have two choices down here. You can do uniform or a technique we call Gaussian. I prefer for this particular effect that you use uniform. Then you'll have a checkbox down here where it says monochromatic, and you want to make sure this is checked. I want you to look at this preview image up here. When it is not checked, you're going to see that you're getting, and again, this original image is red, blue, RGB, red, green, blue, and you'll see all the little simulated film grain in here is RGB, all right? So for this particular effect, make sure you select monochromatic, and now it's all black and white up here, and you're going to go ahead and hit OK. And now what we're going to do this effect, we want to take all the color out of here. And you can do it a couple different ways. What I'm going to suggest you do is come up here under Image, and if you go down to Adjustments here, down near the bottom, you'll see what a prompt here for desaturate. What that means is when you saturate an image, you're adding color and making it more vibrant. When you desaturate it, what you'll do is you're basically taking all the color out of it. Now you'll notice I'm not turning it into a black and white image, because if I do that, it will also make the original underneath black and white. I only want this to be black and white. So I'm going to go ahead and select desaturate. You can see it turned it into a black and white image. Now what I want you to do is boost the contrast. We're going to try and lose some of the grain in the background and maybe boost some of the darkness here in the shadows on the coffee beans. And for this, what you can do, and you don't really need to do it as a adjustment layer, we can just do it straight to this image, is come up here under Image again and Adjustments, and we're going to come to Levels. And I showed you how to do this when we were doing masking on the beauty shot. We're going to go back to Levels here. And again, this shows you the relative distribution of lights and or whites and darks on here. This is absolute black at one end, absolute white on the other. You can see by the histogram, the diagram here, most of your tone here is in these very light grays. And if you look in the image, that's this background back here, a lot of the lighter areas of the photo. So what we're going to do is we're going to boost the contrast. We're going to take this slider in, and you can see we're losing some of the grain in the background here. But it is also washing out a lot of the detail in here. So what we're going to do, and this is really up to you, what looks good to you. I'm going to bring the black slider in here. And you can see I'm really getting more of that, the definition in the shadows here. When you get an image that you think looks good to you, go ahead and hit OK. And what I would do, I'm a big believer in saving whenever you can. So if you do have to go back, you're not going to have to take too many steps or start from the very beginning. So let's go ahead and save this as it is, just so I have this. And I'm just going to save it as a Photoshop file at the very top here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just leave this as the iStock number in here, because this isn't the image I'm going to put actually into my final piece here. So go ahead and hit save, hit OK. Now what we're going to do is make the image that you're going to put in your final document to me. So we're going to create a new document. Remember, these are all going to be 6 by 9, 6 inches wide by 9 inches at 300 dpi. Go ahead and hit create. Now before I bring my image in here, we're going to put that coffee bean image over the simulated kind of paper bag texture here. So let's find that image. I'm going to go ahead and open that. That should be in your photo assets. All right, here it is. It's just kind of a brown paper. We'll go ahead and open that. Now you'll notice this is horizontal and my canvas that I'm working on is vertical. If you want, you can rotate this. Image rotation under the image drop-down menu. We can just rotate it either way. Now what I'm going to do is, you can do one of two things here. I'm going to actually, so I've got all three things nested here. I've got my effect with the Mezzotint technique, I've got my canvas, and I've got this kind of craft brown paper here. I'm going to pull this off out of the nest, and the reason I'm doing that is now I can just kind of drag this image into my canvas. All right. So, and here you can see the original size of it. If you want, you can scale this down if you want to adjust the size. And here I'll make it kind of close to my canvas size. And you'll notice over here in layers, it's created a separate layer for the paper bag texture in here. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the image I just created. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my iStock image with the layer that I created. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull this off out of the nest. And what that's going to allow me to do is to select my image, the Mezzotint technique here, click on that and drag it on top of my craft paper. Now I'm going to leave it to you. We will be talking more about cropping images. So let's assume this is packaging for a brand of coffee. What makes more sense? Should we make it smaller and show more of the bag? Or do you want to go larger and really focus on the coffee beans here? I'm going to leave that up to you. Try and look at your canvas and create a nice composition. So whether you put this over here or show more of the bag there. If this was a real packaging assignment for coffee, in the back of your mind, you want to keep in mind how much type you might have to put on here. So maybe this would go a little lower. But however you position this, once you get it how you like it, what we're going to do is essentially turn this layer kind of transparent so that we can see the brown paper underneath it. And the way you do that is come up here. I'm on my layer with my Mezzotint coffee on here. Come down here. There's a lot of different techniques you can use. And what I would recommend is kind of go down the list here and test drive what effect looks good to you. The one I would use probably would be multiply. here where you can really see that. You can also come here, it's called color burn. What that means is some of the browns and oranges of the paper are coming through the image, so that could be a good option. Other good options, and again, scroll through these, see what looks good to you. From a packaging standpoint, this just washes everything out, so these are probably not good choices. Down here may be options for you as well. Overlay, soft light, and hard light might be good. But I think looking over all of these, the one I've kind of liked the best would be this color burn. Multiply, there's a lot of black in there. This adds a little bit more color, which may be a little bit more appetizing. So once you're done with this, again, you always want to save your layered working file. So this one we're going to put in here, and I will call this, you can call this coffee if you want. You can call it Mezzotint. That's what I'm going to call it. Mezzotint. Again, you want to leave it in the Photoshop format so you have that layered file. So go ahead and hit save. And now we're going to create the file that's going to go in your final document here. So again, all of these need to be flattened CMYK TIFF files. So again, in the layer menu, go to the little hamburger icon, and you want to come down here near the bottom where it says flatten. All right. Now you see I lost all my layers, so I can't move my image. I can't change the effect. So you only want to do this when you're absolutely certain you're happy with what you have. Now we have to change the color space in here. So again, this image right now is RGB. Anything going for print, you need to change that into CMYK. Again, I advise you, here's the thing. A lot of my clients, I shouldn't say a lot of my clients, some of my clients want me to always work in CMYK. And I always tell them I am, but I always work in RGB. And the reason I always work in RGB, I'll just divert here for a second. When you're in RGB, come up here under the filter and you'll see all the filters are available to me. And watch what happens when I change this into CMYK. So first of all, watch the color shift on the image. When I shift this, it's going to ask me, and it's basically warning me the color is going to shift. On this one, it wasn't as severe as it was on the beauty shot where that violet background really changed. So this looks pretty good, but now that we've changed it to CMYK, look at what happens to your filter menu. There's a lot of filters that do not work in the CMYK color space. And so I always work in RGB, and then even if the client has asked me to work in CMYK, because at the end of the day, what they're going to get is the CMYK files, and they won't know whether or not I did work in it or not. So anyhow, so this is our final file. We're going to go ahead and save this into the TIFFs file. So let me make sure where my TIFFs file is. Let's see here. I'm still getting used to this. Thank you, that's what I was looking for. So I'm still looking for my TIFFs folder, which I believe I put in photo assets. If we go down there, there it is. Again, make sure once you've found the place, but really remember you got to change this format into a TIFF. And then once we do that, save it. Again, if you're on a PC, switch this to PC. Leave everything else the same. Go ahead and hit OK, and you're done with the Mezzotint.